Hello everybody, welcome back to another franchise rant review and discussion. Today we're going to be talking about the Nolanverse, which of course are the Batman films directed by Christopher fucking Nolan. Yes, my friends. So, if you already haven't seen my franchise rant review and discussion that I did for Spider-Man, you can check that out. It's a couple videos back. I essentially go in depth with the Spider-Man trilogy, talk about some of the things that kind of annoyed me, some of the things that I did like in the movie, because contrary to popular belief, I enjoy watching the first two Spider-Man movies. People miss the point, I guess. So you can check those out if you want. But today, what we're going to be talking about on the first part of this series, we're going to be talking about Batman Begins, and this is the exclusive Best Buy Steelbook, which if you've been meaning to pick up either Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, this is definitely the time too, because Best Buy is going crazy with their sales for everything DC. So I was able to pick this up for $10, and it also gave me a coupon for $5 off The Dark Knight Rises. So I think it's now more than ever is the best time to pick up the Nolan films on Blu-ray. You can get them in Steelbooks, both of them, $20 total, and you also get $5 off, like I said, the tickets to The Dark Knight Rises. I'm not sure if you could stack up the coupons, probably not, but hey, you can take your loved one to go see it with you, so you'll be saving some money either way. Anyway, now before we get into the actual movie, I felt it was right to give a little history lesson on Batman in modern film. Generally speaking, from the start of the Tim Burton movies. Now, Tim Burton directed two Batman movies. They were Batman, simply titled, and Batman Returns. And followed by that, you entered the Joel Schumacher era, which was Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Yeah, you already know where this is going. Now, when it comes to the Tim Burton movies, the first movie in particular, I really liked and enjoyed. I didn't have as many problems like the other people did. I know a lot of hardcore comic book fans don't like it at all. But personally, I can watch it and really enjoy it. Some of the main things that I really did like they did in the movie, I thought the score was pretty good. I felt that the set design was fantastic. I loved seeing Gotham City. It just looked stunning. You're reading the comics, then you see that, it's like, wow. And especially if you watch it in high definition, it's just gorgeous. But there were some things that I felt that for the sake of the plot, a lot of things were way too convenient. Like, you have the Joker, right? And the Joker is established as the guy who killed Batman's parents in this movie. I felt that was a bit too convenient with the plot, because when you get to the conclusion and Batman kills Joker, that's it. Essentially, the vibe that I got, especially if you watch Batman Forever, is that this was more a vendetta and more about revenge as opposed to the bigger meaning, you know, the bigger picture. But, you know, ignoring that and ignoring Danny Elfman's score, I mean, I'm sorry, I love his score, but the score is the same in every freaking movie. Like the riff tracks guy said, there's no theme here, it's just a bunch of Danny Elfman scurrying around, you know? But overall, Batman, the 1989 movie, is pretty good. Michael Keaton, in my opinion, is, I don't know, I'd say he's my favorite Batman on film. But my favorite Batman in general will just have to be Kevin Conroy, which is another story altogether. Then you move on to Batman Returns, which introduced Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Danny DeVito as the Penguin. You know, this is where I think Tim Burton really dropped the ball and he just went all out crazy. It's like, hey Tim, we're doing a sequel, so go all out, have fun, kid in the candy store. Yeah, and his isms, the Tim Burton isms, are definitely more apparent there. So it's a lot of that, in addition with the excessive camp and the excessive over-the-topness. I mean, superheroes by default are going to be campy. I mean, dudes running around in spandex, for Christ's sake. But to the extremes that Burton took it, Schumacher, and of course Raimi, it just kind of killed the experience, you know? And following that, Tim Burton either was unwilling or they didn't want him to come back. I believe it was the latter, because as you guys know, for the longest time, in both the comics and in live-action television series, Batman was considered the campiest of all camp. I mean, when you go into the 1989 Batman and then you see that it's a lot more grounded than the 60s series, which is what people perceived Batman to be in the mainstream, I mean, outside of, you know, the hardcore comic book fans, most people assumed him to be this campy guy. So I think Warner Brothers definitely wanted to take it back to that camp to make it more appealable to audiences like children, you know, which it makes sense, I guess, because for the longest time it was selling to kids because it was campy. And now that they actually go back and do it right, it's like, oh no, it's too dark for kids, too dark for kids. So, yeah, what are you gonna do? So they bring in Joel Schumacher and they make it more lighthearted and more campy. And Batman Forever is still decent, not too great, not too good. I sort of liked what they did with the Riddler. Jim Carrey, I think Jim Carrey was a good choice for the Riddler, but like I said, they just went way too over the top to the point that it's like, what are you doing, man? But seriously. And then we get on to the bane of the entire series. No pun intended. Seriously. Batman and Robin. And that's where things just lost it. Critics and fans alike critically panned the film. It wasn't that successful at the box office. And yeah, thankfully they rebooted it. When they announced that they'd be getting Arnold Schwarzenegger for the movie, that's when if I actually knew what I was thinking back then, I'd be like, wow. Why? But ignoring that, Warner Brothers decides, you know, maybe we should go back and do it right, not only for the fans, but to restore Batman's reputation. So, in 2005, we got Batman Begins, directed by Christopher Nolan. And yeah, that is pretty much where we have been for Batman on film for the past 7 years. Now, what I really liked about this, despite ignoring the fact that it was a reboot that was being more faithful to Batman, that was already given, I really did enjoy how much dedication they actually gave to the development from Bruce Wayne and when he becomes Batman. I felt that if they wanted to definitely differentiate themselves from the works that have come prior on film like Batman and Robin, they just generally want to show that, listen guys, we're starting out from scratch, so if you're expecting this over-the-top camp, it's not here. Which is why they spent the majority of the movie with Bruce Wayne. It's not necessarily a Batman movie, it's an origin story about Batman, hence the title, Begins. So that's something I definitely enjoyed, him becoming Batman. It takes, I believe, an hour or so for him to get into the suit. And even when he becomes Batman, he's not really the badass that people think he is going to be at the start, because this Batman movie, it draws elements from several works, The Long Halloween, Year One, as well as some other things down the road when you get into The Dark Knight. And with those elements mixed in with this more realistic setting, which is, I know, something that people kind of complain about. At some points it's like, why is it this realistic? I think that Nolan generally just wanted to make it seem like this stuff could be plausible. I mean, if someone actually wanted to run out there dressed like a bat. Which is why I didn't really mind it, because it's not like taking something like, I don't know, it's not like taking something like Hulk and trying to make it hyper-realistic, you know what I'm saying? There's obviously going to be some craziness going on there, because that's what comics are known for. Batman is one of the more, I'd say, realistic superheroes, because he's not really a superhero. He's just a guy with billions of dollars, jillions of dollars, and, you know, all he has is his intellect and his strength, you know? So that's why I think a lot of people call him a badass, because he doesn't need to shoot lasers. He doesn't need to have this super strength. He doesn't need to, you know, shoot webs. He doesn't need to do any of that. All he has is his intellect and his guns, man, as well as his arsenal of weapons. So I think that he made the transition from comic book to more of a realistic setting easier, as opposed to doing it to something like Thor. It actually works. I believe that for the most part they do a good job explaining how these things come about. They talk a lot about, they spend a lot of time talking about his armor and how it's going to hold up to certain enemies, you know, like dogs or knives or guns and all that junk. And it also does a great job of showing how imperfect he really is. He's not this guy who has all the answers. He's just some dude who decides to dress up like a bat. I mean, he's going to have some issues on his first outings, because that's just who we are. He's not going to be this insane badass that we know him of today. Like, look at Arkham City and compare that Batman to Batman in Batman Begins. Obviously, he's going to be inexperienced, because he's a young guy who's just coming into this. which is definitely, like I said, one of the things that was great to separate it from the previous films, because they showed Batman in his prime doing all this cool stuff. Now this is the younger version. And the movie has a great cast of characters and actors to portray them. Morgan Freeman plays Lucius Fox. Morgan Freeman. Not much to say on Morgan Freeman except he's boss. Liam Neeson portrays the villain, Ra's al Ghul. If there were a hierarchy of people, Liam Neeson and Morgan Freeman would be fighting for the position of God. And then Ron Perlman would be kind of trying to get up there. Maybe Chuck Norris, I'm not sure, but point blank, it was great to see both of them in the movie. I think that Liam Neeson did a fantastic job as Ra's al Ghul. You also had Cillian Murphy, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, playing Scarecrow. I thought that what they did with him was great. It was good to have a sub-villain in the movie. And he definitely filled up the time for when Liam Neeson was off camera. For obvious reasons, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Michael Caine portrays Alfred, and at this point I really don't have to say anything else because you have such legendary actors involved with this project. And then you have Katie Holmes, who portrays Rachel Dawes. And I think for what she did a good job. I know a lot of people kind of complain that there wasn't too much romance in the movie, but I think it kind of worked for it, because it should have never only been about romance. I mean, because you look at superhero films like Spider-Man 1, and then you look at what the heck's that movie called? Thor, and you see how the chemistry is just, it's kind of off and it's kind of wonky. I actually liked that it wasn't the main focus of the movie. I liked that it was sort of hinted at, but then at the same time they weren't trying to get into something serious, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's why some of the critics were annoyed. They were expecting like to be this full-on love romance thing, and it doesn't need to be. Not all superheroes need to have a love interest on film, you know? It's nice that you can hint at it, sure, but you don't need to go over the top. And like, look what happened with Thor. Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth's chemistry was, I mean, it was fun when they were doing the funny stuff, but as actual romance, that's stupid. It was underdeveloped. It was just completely underwhelming. So I was glad that we saw none of that in Begins. Overall, the film is just really good. I do prefer it over the Dark Knight, mainly because of that great character development that goes on with Batman. Mainly because of that, because I just love that they were taking good care of the character. And well, my friends, that pretty much sums up this part of the Batman Nolanverse franchise review. The final verdict on Batman Begins: it is a very entertaining and enjoyable movie. It's going to keep you pulled in for, I'd say, the majority of the film, because it really doesn't slow itself down to the point that, get on with it, get on with it, get on with it. Christopher Nolan does a really good job at keeping you entertained all throughout. It definitely does its job as an origin movie as opposed to a full-on superhero movie. I really do like these type of movies because it gets me to care for the characters as opposed to rushing it with a title credit or just in the first 15 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And it definitely set the groundwork for an even better sequel to come. Join me for the next part of this franchise review where we'll be discussing The Dark Knight.